Imagine gliding through a winding canyon road in the hills above Los Angeles on a crisp October evening in 1968. The steep slopes are crowned by lavish mansions with sweeping city views, each one lit like a beacon against the darkening sky. You drive up to a quiet Spanish-style villa perched high in Laurel Canyon, an imposing iron gate, a shadowy courtyard, and the faint glow of stained glass windows. Inside that house, once host to star-studded gatherings of Hollywood's silent-era elite, an aging man sits quietly. He's dressed in a crisp shirt and slacks, hair meticulously groomed, as though still awaiting the camera's signal for his close-up. Tonight, he expects visitors, two young men from Chicago. In the hush of the lavish living room, perhaps he paces, the clink of ice in a glass echoing over the hush of distant traffic. He has no idea these visitors will kill him before dawn. This is Ramón Novarro, once the radiant Latin lover of Hollywood's silent screen, revered alongside Valentino, who has become a tragic figure caught between a cautious Catholic upbringing, closeted desires, and the harsh glare of scandal. By sunrise, his brutal murder will splinter his legacy, revealing secrets that Hollywood had forced him to hide for decades. Born José Ramón Gil Samaniego on February 6, 1899, in Durango, Mexico, he was raised devoutly Catholic within a socially distinguished family. The Mexican Revolution forced them to flee to Los Angeles. When Ramón was a teenager, there, despite strict religious expectations, he found his artistic streak thriving in the swirl of an embryonic Hollywood. By the early 1920s, he'd anglicized his name to Ramón Novarro and garnered small roles in silent pictures, eventually catching the eye of Metro Pictures, soon to merge into MGM. He had the luminous eyes, the stately cheekbones, and a regal bearing that made producers swoon, an ideal candidate for the era's demand for exotic romantic heroes. But beneath that polished exterior lay a man wrestling with conflicting identities. He revered the church's teachings, yet felt drawn to men. He yearned to be himself, yet recognized that in a bigoted industry, revealing his truth could end everything. His big break came after Rudolph Valentino's death in 1926. Hollywood had lost its top Latin lover, an idol for female fans who craved mystique and sensual danger. Eager to anoint a new star, MGM seized upon Novarro, who was close enough in looks and aura to fill the gap. Indeed, he soon headlined hits like Scaramouche, 1923, actually preceding Valentino's death but raising Novarro's profile, and The Student Prince in Old Heidelberg, 1927, which showcased his charm. He soared to the top with Ben-Hur, 1925, ironically overshadowing even his own earlier roles. Audiences marveled at that chiseled face gliding across the screen in Roman costume. MGM assured him that a luminous future lay ahead, but with that promise came demands. More shirtless scenes to tantalize, more press coverage hinting at torrid romances with co-stars. The studio carefully curated rumors to pair him with Greta Garbo. Both starred in Mata Hari, 1931, spreading the notion that maybe off-screen, the two formed a secret romance. Fans ate it up, enthralled by the invented mystique of these sophisticated foreigners. In truth, Ramon's real relationships were far from the gossip columns. In the early 1920s, rumor had it he was intimately close with composer Harry Parch, though details remained sparse. Later, near the late 20s, he grew close to journalist Herbert Howe, who penned pieces about film stars. Novarro's Catholic guilt weighed on him, confounding these partnerships with secrecy. Some accounts speak of him praying fervently after each encounter, torn between faith and desire. Yet MGM insisted on maintaining his facade as a refined bachelor, linking him to glamorous women and cunning publicity stunts. That made him uneasy. He was the quiet, introspective type, preferring intimate soirees to the lavish parties beloved by many colleagues. Yet to the public, he was a sizzling heartthrob, stepping into Valentino's shadow. This contradiction shaped his career, sowing the seeds for personal struggles that would intensify in the 1930s. The sudden shift from silent to sound pictures around 1929 tested every star. Many discovered their voices either didn't fit talkies or that the public lost interest once illusions gave way to audible dialogue. Novarro, with a gentle but distinctly accented voice, found it challenging to pivot. He scored a moderate success in The Pagan, 1929, a talkie that attempted to capitalize on his exotic image, but critics started to note that his Spanish inflection felt foreign, a coded critique in an industry that prized the Anglo accent for leading men. Studios politely urged voice coaches, but Novarro refused to flatten his accent entirely. That defiance didn't help. Coupled with new star power from up-and-comers like Clark Gable, Novarro's stardom started to fade. By the mid-1930s, the once luminous idol found fewer film offers. Craving fresh artistic outlets, he briefly tried Broadway around 1935, hoping to indulge his dream of performing opera or legitimate theater. That venture fizzled. Eager to preserve whatever stardom lingered, he bounced between second-tier film roles and sporadic stints singing on radio. The public no longer saw him as the unstoppable Latin lover, but as a vestige of silent-era glam. Meanwhile, privately, the toll of living a closeted life under industry scrutiny wore on him. From the late 1930s onward, Novarro grew more dependent on alcohol to numb the stress. Social drinking turned into routine drunken escapades. Paparazzi occasionally snapped photos of him stumbling out of clubs. In 1947, the scandal peaked with a DUI arrest in Los Angeles. The press made subdued references to the erstwhile star, once a paragon of manly grace, now found reeling behind the wheel. MGM, which had parted ways with him by then, offered no rescue. He was left to handle the legal blow and associated shame alone, heightening his sense of isolation. The man who once rivaled Valentino in box office draws now floated on the fringe, occasionally landing cameo roles in television, like an episode of the WW2 drama Combat in 1965. Younger viewers, mostly ignorant of his silent film past, probably found him an intriguing curiosity. For older fans, each appearance evoked nostalgia for a bygone era, but the shadow of rumor always clung to him. An old star once forced to mask his sexuality, now living quietly, rumored to hire private companions behind the scenes. And so we return to that fateful night of October 30th, 1968. By then, Novarro was 69, living in modest comfort at 3110 Laurel Canyon Boulevard, his final nest. He wasn't rich, despite old tales that he'd hidden a fortune from his heyday. Some talk about thousands of dollars stashed in the walls or under the floorboards, pure rumor, yet it circulated among underground hustlers. That's how Paul Ferguson, 22, and his half-brother Tom, 17, came to his door. They were from Chicago, newly arrived in L.A., seeking quick money through sex work. Possibly they found Novarro's address from a clandestine escort network he sometimes used. Maybe they believed the lore about $5,000 stashed on the property. So they ring the bell. He lets them in, presumably expecting a regular arrangement. But the Fergusons, fueled by rumor and greed, brandish violence instead. They demand that he give them the legendary stash. Novarro, baffled, tries to explain that there's no such hidden fortune. The confrontation escalates into torture. A silver-headed cane, apparently a souvenir from one of his old film props, becomes their weapon. They beat him mercilessly, tying him up with cords, trashing the living room in a hunt for money that isn't there. He bleeds from severe blows to the face and chest, battered so thoroughly that he chokes on his own blood. The next morning, Halloween of 1968, his secretary, Edward Weber, arrives to find a gruesome scene. Novarro's nude, bound body lying in a congealing pool of blood, face battered beyond recognition, mouth stuffed with a wad of tissue. The smell of stale liquor and coppery blood saturates the air. In that horrific moment, the illusions of his carefully guarded private life vanish. The world learns not only about his violent end, but about the hidden world of hustlers he'd resorted to for companionship. Autopsy reports reveal unspeakable brutality, a broken nose, severe bruising around the genitals, lacerations on the chest, massive blood loss, leading to asphyxiation. He was slightly intoxicated, blood alcohol levels around 0.23, but that offered no defense against the savage onslaught. The killers walked away with a mere $20 from his wallet, leaving behind the shattered myth that Novarro had stashed thousands. For months, the press devours the story. Latin lover slain, the headlines scream. Some tabloids highlight prurient details of the homosexual angle, stoking moral outrage. Others focus on the viciousness of the homicide, the savage irony that a star known for romance died in a scene of barbaric violence. The police eventually apprehend Paul and Tom Ferguson, culminating in a sensational trial in July 1969. Paul blames Tom, claiming a homosexual panic. Tom confesses to delivering the fatal blows, but says Paul egged him on. The jury hands them both life sentences. They serve brief stints. Tom is out by 1977, Paul by 1978. Paul later reconfesses in 1998, verifying they found no money that night. Tom eventually kills himself in 2005. Paul dies in prison in 2018 on unrelated assault charges. The entire fiasco cements a chilling footnote in Hollywood crime annals. Amid that swirl, the funeral for Novarro occurs quietly on November 2nd, 1968. He's interred at Calvary Cemetery in East Los Angeles, a simpler Catholic service attended by a scattering of old associates. The major studios keep their distance. Gossip overshadowing the funeral? The Sharon Tate murders by the Manson family happened just months later in 1969, overshadowing Novarro's tragedy in the public consciousness. Hollywood moves on, burying the memory of a star from a bygone era. Meanwhile, Kenneth Anger's salacious 1975 book Hollywood Babylon breathes new rumor, an absurd claim that he died from choking on a dildo gifted by Valentino. It's nonsense, but it becomes one of those persistent legends that attach themselves to the macabre. People still repeat it decades later, ignoring police evidence that tells a far bleaker but more mundane tale. When you see that final shot of him, backlit in a silent epic, regal in Roman garb, or swashbuckling in medieval costume, you might now catch a tremor of longing. That's the real triumph of remembering him fully. We restore the man behind the facade, recognizing how illusions robbed him of a safe place in the world. In the end, it's the heartbreak of a Catholic boy from Mexico who soared to stardom but died in brutality, just for being who he was and for illusions about gold stashed in his home. That's Ramón Novarro, an unforgettable name once used to evoke romance and adventure, now also conjuring the swirling darkness that enveloped him. In that swirl, we see all of Hollywood's old contradictions, shimmering illusions and lethal truths, and we might vow not to forget.